Hello, Jane Roxana here, and this is my third show on the beginning, and today we're going to be talking about Genesis 1, 3 through 4, and I'll read that. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So I thought a good place to start was what is light? And I found this great article on the bbc.com written by Colin Barris, and he goes through how they figured out what light was. And this is what the article says. There are all sorts of ways to describe light, but it might help to begin with this. Light is a form of radiation. It wasn't until the late 19th century that scientists discovered the exact identity of light radiation. This hopefully makes some sense. We all know that too much sunlight can trigger skin cancer. We also know that radiation exposure can raise the risk of developing some forms of cancer, so it's not hard to put the two together. The strange thing is, this discovery didn't come from the study of light. Instead, it emerged from the decades of work into the nature of electricity and magnetism. Now, Maxwell showed that electric and magnetic fields travel in the manner of waves, and that those waves move essentially at the speed of light. This allowed Maxwell to predict that light itself was carried by electromagnetic waves, which means light is a form of electromagnetic radiation. Tongue twister there. Newton realized that rays of light obeyed very strict geometric rules. Shine a ray against a mirror and it bounced off exactly the same way a ball would if it were thrown against the mirror. Waves don't necessarily move in such predictable straight lines, he reasoned. So light must be carried by some form of tiny, weightless particles. The trouble is, there is equally compelling evidence that light is a wave. Now, Young's experiment was compelling evidence of the wave model, and Maxwell's work put that idea on a solid mathematical footing that light is a wave. But then came the quantum revolution. At this point, physicists decided to end the debate over whether light behaved as a wave or a particle. Both models were so convincing that neither could be rejected. To the confusion of many non-physicists, the scientists decided that light behaved as both a wave and a particle at the same time. In other words, light is a paradox. Physicists, though, have no problem with light's split identity. If anything, it makes light doubly useful. Today, building on the work of luminaries, literally light givers, like Maxwell and Einstein, we are squeezing even more out of light. It turns out that the equations used to describe light as a wave and light as a particle works equally well. But in some circumstances, one is easier to use than the other. So physicists switch between them, just as we use meters to describe our own height, but switch to kilometers to describe a bicycle ride. I like that when he says in the article that light is a paradox. 2 Corinthians 4:6 says, "For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness." Isaiah 45:7 says, "I form the light and create darkness." Psalm 74:16 says, "The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun." Now, cosmic evolutionists have no problem having light before the stars were made. They call this the cosmic microwave background, or CMB. They claim that it was released about 380,000 to 400,000 years after the Big Bang. Now, the CMB was found by accident in 1965. Two researchers with Bell Telephone Laboratories were creating a radio receiver and were puzzled by the noise it was picking up. They soon realized the noise came uniformly from all over the sky. At the same time, a team at Princeton University was trying to find the CMB. Their team got wind of the Bell experiment and realized that they had found the CMB. I think that's amazing that they were looking for noise. They found the CMB through noise instead of light. Now, I'm going to talk about the CMB a little bit. And this article I found at space.com, it's called The Cosmological Axis of Evil. And it was written by Paul Sutter. And I'm not going to read the whole article. The first part of the article has them explaining how the Earth is not unique in the universe, how our galaxy is not unique in the universe, that there's nothing special about our place in the universe, which is contradictory to what God says in His Word about the Earth and even our sun and our moon. He created this Earth special. He took 6 days to create this world that we live on, and the rest of the universe pretty much He kind of, flung out there. But He took special notice of Earth because He was making it for His special creation, which is mankind. This is always the opposite of what secular scientists want people to believe in. And I'm going to throw this out there. I think this is what spiritual warfare is about. The secular scientists don't believe in the spiritual side of life, but they are endlessly engaging in spiritual warfare. What would be the point of reiterating all the time that the Earth is not special, is completely the opposite of what God says in His Word, that this place is special to Him and He created it special? Over and over is the opposite of what God says. No, Earth is not special, when we can see the Earth is special. What's wrong with saying the Earth is special? It's the only place in the universe that has life. It's the only planet that is perfect distance from the sun to contain life. We have a perfect atmosphere to contain life. We have water. We have plants. We have animals. So this is a unique place in the universe. But they insist consistently and constantly that it is not. And that the whole half of this article is talking about that. But I want to go to the second half of the article about the pole positions. All right, so starting at this article at the pole position. There are subtle, tiny differences in the temperature of the CMB light from place to place. Those minuscule variations offer a wealth of information on pressing cosmological questions, like the geometry of the universe, the amount of dark matter, and the growth of the largest structures. To mathematically quantify the statistical properties of the CMB's characteristic bumps and wiggles, cosmologists turn to a technique called multipole expansion. This expansion looks at ever smaller patches of the sky and analyzes the variations at only that scale. So here's the CMB, and won't make it. It's always looks like an oval or whatever. Okay. Let's see, can you see that on the film there? Yes, you can. All right. So the first scale is the average CMB temperature across the whole monopole. So the whole thing is the monopole, 1. All right. So they get that temperature there. The second is the dipole, or 2 hemispheres. So basically they cut that in half and they measure this against this. All right. The next is the quadrupole. You guessed it. And then after that, the octupole. All right. And they keep going smaller and smaller up to 4,000 poles. And they individually test all that. The total CMB signal is the sum of all these contributions at various sizes, and in an isotropic universe, these should all have random orientations. The dipole's hot patch may be over here, but the octupole should be directed over there, with no connection between them. And it turns out there are. From the 2-pole to the 4,000 pole, the European Space Agency's Planck mission, which observed the CMB from 2009 to 2013, verified that all the multipoles point in all sorts of random directions, except for the quadrupole and the octupole, which are just a few degrees away from each other. This coincidence was first noted by NASA's early WMAP mission, but many dismissed it as the statistical fluke that would surely go away with better measurements. It didn't go away with better measurements, and it gets worse. It seems that the CMB is slightly cooler when viewed through the top half of our solar system. Here's our solar system. top half. There we go. And slightly warmer on the opposite side. I'm not talking much, just a handful of microkelvin differences, but it's measurable and definitely there. Plus, this peculiar relationship to our solar system is aligned with the quadrupole and the octopole. That's odd. It's one thing for two of the multipoles to be aligned. Maybe that's just random coincidence. But it's another for them to be associated with our solar system, hence the nickname Axis of Evil. What's going on? The CMB shouldn't give two photons about our solar system. It was generated before the sun was a twinkle in our Milky Way's eye. And we can't find any simple astrophysical explanation like a random cloud of dust in our southern end that might interfere with the pristine cosmological signal in this odd way. Is it really just coincidence, he says in this article? A chance alignment that we're conditioned to find because of our pattern-loving brains? Or does it seductively point the way to new and revolutionary physics? Or maybe we just screwed something up with the measurements. At this early stage, it's tough to say. There aren't a lot of data. And it's easy to get excited. We'll just have to wait and see. Eventually, the universe will, wait for it, point us in the right direction. Well, I see God created the universe and he put signs out there to point us in the right direction. But in other words, what he's saying is, how can the quadrupole, the 4, and the octopole, and our solar system line up? How could the early universe even know about our solar system? Contrary to evolution's belief that the earth is nothing special, God put special care into creating the earth above all other heavenly bodies. To him, it is very special, for it would be the home of his most precious creation, mankind. Perhaps God is telling us, this place is special. All right? You are special. I like the Psalms 19:1 through 4. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech. Remember, they found the CMB by noise in the sky. And night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, their words to the end of the world. Amazing. I think that's amazing. Now, Dr. Henry Morris stated in an article of his I want to read, The Light in the Sun, and he states, it is interesting that modern evolutionary cosmologists find no problem in having light before the sun. According to their speculative reconstruction of cosmic history, light energy was produced in the imaginary Big Bang 15 billion years ago, whereas the sun evolved only 5 billion years ago. Thus, even in their attempts to destroy the divine revelation of Genesis, they inadvertently find it necessary to return to its concepts. Light energy somehow had to be prepared before the sun and other stars could ever be set up to serve as future generators of light energy. The fact that light is an entity independent of the sun and other heavenly bodies is one of the remarkable scientific insights of the Bible. As the basic form of energy, even intrinsic in the very nature of matter, as expressed in the famous Einstein equation, it is significant that the first recorded word spoken by the Creator was, "Let there be light." Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the days. Since this is day 1, we'll go ahead and do that. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So this article put out by ICR.org titled, Does the Phrase Evening and Morning Help Define a Day? This was written by John D. Morris. The length of the days of Genesis 1 has been much debated. Are the days of Genesis 1 regular solar days, referring to the rotation of the earth on its axis, or could each day be a long, indefinite period of time, equivalent in total to the vast time spans of geology? Such an interpretation would give solace to Christians who try to harmonize long ages with Genesis. It is true that the Hebrew word yom, translated day, can have a variety of meanings. By far its most common is a literal day, but it can mean age. The question is, what does it mean here? As always, for a word with multiple possible meanings, we must let the scriptural context take precedence in discerning its meaning for a particular usage. Interestingly, the very first time the word was used in Genesis 1:5, it is strictly defined as the light portion of a light-dark cycle as the earth rotated underneath a directional light source, producing day and night. It is also true that whenever day is modified by a number, like second day or 6 days, it can only mean a true solar day. There are no exceptions in Hebrew. Any uncertainty is resolved in the Ten Commandments, as God commands us to work 6 days and rest 1 day, just as he worked on the 6 creation days and rested on day 7. Now consider that each day in Genesis is modified by the term evening and morning, both commonly used words in the Old Testament. Can they be referring to indefinite periods of time? Standard Bible study tools define that Hebrew word for evening, or Arab, is meaning simply evening or night. It is derived from expressions connotating the setting of the sun or sunset and associated with evening sacrificial meal and rituals. Often mentioned is the evening sacrifice or returning at evening. Likewise, the word for morning, bokur, literally means morning or dawn, the breaking through of daylight, and reference is made to rising early in the morning or keeping the fires burning until morning. There is little possibility of translating the word pair as the end of the age and or the beginning of an age. Now, the job of both Bible student and expositor is to carefully determine what the author of Scripture is communicating to the reader. We dare not impose on the straightforward Word of God our own bias. We must stand in submission to him and his words. Remember, God is all-wise and wants to reveal truth to us, things we might not know otherwise. He can also write clearly. He will help us understand even difficult passages if we value his thoughts above our own. Now, everything that God does is for a purpose. I can contend that God could have created everything in a split second, perfect and ready to go, but he didn't. He took the time and he wrote it down that he took 6 days to create creation and 7 to rest. All right, it's a thought to think about. Now, does billions, millions, or thousands even matter? So I want to go back to the 1940s and what was being taught about evolution there. Back then, it was taught that the Earth and the universe were only about 2 billion years old. And this was considered a fact, verified by several independent methods that gave the same date. Now, however, students are taught that the age of the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and the universe is 13.8 billion years old. All right, this clearly shows that the scientific method in relation to the past has problems. Scientists should approach this issue cautiously, recognizing their own limitations. Now, Kenneth Ham made a statement in billions, millions, or thousands that I want to read. Christians insist that the meaning of Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, is that billions of years ago God began creating the heavens and the earth because of what they believe scientists have proved in regard to the age of the earth. Christians have to realize that if they accept an old age for the earth, this view did not come from the Bible. It comes from outside the Bible. Thus, when they insist that we accept the billions of years theory, they are really telling us to accept the fallible words of fallible scientists whose theories change, who were not there, who don't know everything, to tell God what he means. Thus, they have put man in judgment of God. Man becomes the authority. And I want to reiterate again today that cosmological evolutionists take God out of the equation from the very start. So I want you to remember that. Isaiah 2:22 states, "Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of?" In other words, the message is, quit scraping and fawning over mere humans, so full of themselves, so full of hot air. Can't you see there is nothing to them? For me to accept an old age, billions of years, for the earth, is to accept that fallible man's fallible methods are an authority over God's infallible words. I can't do that. Can you? As a Christian, we need to rethink about how we think about Genesis 1. I'm going to keep reiterating this and throughout this series that I'm doing on the beginnings. So we as Christians can believe every word that God has written in the scripture. For if we can't believe some of it, then how can we believe any of it? I'm going to recap on our day 1. What biblical creationists versus cosmic evolutionists believe. Before, creationists believed that God exists. And evolutionists believe that there was nothing before. There was nothing darkness. God light, nothing darkness. Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth." Evolutionist Herbert Spencer recognized the 5 manifestations of natural phenomena: space, time, matter, motion, and force. In the beginning time, God created force and motion, the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. Biblical creationists believe the earth, as water, unformed and void, was created on day 1. Cosmic evolutionists believe the earth was created 4.6 billion years ago. Cosmic evolutionists believe the universe is 13.8 billion years old and that light, cosmic microwave background, came about at 380,000 years after the Big Bang. Biblical creationists believe God spoke, "Let there be light," into existence on day 1, approximately 6,000 years ago. Biblical creationists believe in 6 literal creation days. Exodus 20:11, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." And unlike day, month, and year, the universal week, however, has no astronomical base whatever. We keep time in weeks simply because God does. All right, that's it for today. And my next show, number 4, will be on day 2. Finally, yes. All right, hope to see you there.